Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished and respected tech entrepreneur from Coimbatore, India, but who shuttles between the US, Manila, and India, Mr. Siva Balakrishnan. Shiva, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Great to be here, and thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Shiva is the founder and chief executive officer of WeServe. He has been a pioneer in e-commerce outsourcing with 2 decades of US market expertise. He has received the Pioneer Entrepreneurship Award in 2020, and he just told me he's a member of the Entrepreneurs Organization, which is like YPO, the EO. So, Shiva, my first question for you: what was the pivotal moment that inspired your transition from engineering to building a tech-enabled outsourced company in the e-commerce space?
Sure. Again, thanks for having me, Ashutosh. Really excited to talk to your audience. It's amazing the kind of reach and the following that you've built. So kudos to that. So for me personally, I started off doing my engineering in CIT, which is an institution in Coimbatore, and then went to US for a master's. And then along the way, it's a kind of interesting story, but basically I ended up outsourcing a little bit of my job when I was in the US. So that was my first taste of outsourcing. And then once that happened, I shared this experience with somebody in the US, and they said, "Hey, you already are in outsourcing. You know what it is, how it's done. So why don't you help me out?" And that's kind of how I started up right when I was in school. Came back here. We found a browsing center. So we kind of said, okay, give us the evening slot so we can bring in our developers and our processing people to kind of occupy that space. So we kind of really did a very low cost initial test. And then it worked out great. There's great margins. And then I basically said, okay, I'm just going to leave everything else that I had planned and then come back and get this started. So that's how this whole thing started, Ashutosh. And then I've always been in this space. It's it's been rewarding. At the same time, it has its own challenges. As the technology evolves, we've kind of evolved over a period of time. But overall, it's been a rewarding.
Fascinating. Yes. And what were some of the biggest challenges or roadblocks in the early days of Vserve? And how did you convince your first major US client to trust an outsourcing solution from India?
Yeah, I think the first customer is probably 10x harder than your next 10, right? So it's always the case, and then the next 100 are like 10x easier than the first 10. So it just gets easier as you grow, as you have a track record and all that. But the first customer, what I realized was they're always betting on you. So they realize that, hey, you can do all the talk, you can say, company this, that, as a typical salesman, you're going to obviously try to sell yourself, but and the company, but the first customer is actually betting on you, right? So he's saying, okay, I trust this guy or this person, and I trust he's going to do the right thing for me, and he's going to figure it out. So he also kind of sees through all this. When you're a startup, they know that, hey, you're trying to figure out, and they appreciate it a lot of times. And then the trust is really on you. So my experience has been be kind of honest, be straightforward, go tell them your story, make them realize that you have their best interest at heart, and then you have the capability to pull it off whatever way it's going to be. And once you give them that trust, they're going to give you that little opening, and then you can always go from there. And then that little opening also, I think you have to be a little, I mean, my experience has been you have to be a little smart about it, finding a niche that nobody else wants to get into. Oftentimes, these are some of the areas that, hey, an established company would say, oh, that's a headache, it's too complicated. I don't want to get into that. I'm going to spend like 200 hours on it, and then the customer is only going to pay me 20. So those areas where you go in and say, hey, I'm gonna do this for you, and that's where the customer is going to give you that chance. So it's really a combination of, hey, does he trust you? Can you help him, through that journey and, find a solution, and then getting into a niche which is a little bit underserved.
What a great response. Thank you. And you're so right. I've often also said for a startup founder, Going from 0 to 1 is the most difficult.
Absolutely.
And you said it's 10x more difficult. So that emphasizes that even more. Shiva, let's now talk about WeServe e-commerce and e-commerce transformation. You've been in this business for many, many years. What are three of the most significant shifts you've seen in US e-commerce over the past few years?
Yeah, I mean, so when we actually when we started off, about 10 years back in the e-commerce space, before that, we went to other things and we kind of morphed ourselves into the e-commerce space. When we
Hmm.
started off e-commerce, it was a niche, right? So we decided we're going to go after the niche. We can't obviously compete against the big boys
Hmm.
in the yeah, in the more horizontal space. So we said we're going to pick a niche, and e-commerce was a niche. And when we went in, everybody, like how AI is today, everybody wanted to have an AI like e-commerce strategy. Many of them were not sure, and then we were able to go in and help them. And that's how it started off. But then now it's no more a niche. So that's a big change. So everybody has an e-commerce plan, e-commerce strategy, e-commerce presence. So it's not a niche anymore. So that's a big change from what it was to now.
Hmm.
Second is e-commerce as a standalone. Again, people have realized that's not the best way to move forward.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, that's not even a way to sustain yourself. And omnichannel is what the world has moved into, where
Hmm.
commerce is a part of the entire distribution, network that you build. But it's just still about 25%. Maybe with quick commerce and everything, maybe it'll go to 35, 40. In long term, I think physical retail is here to stay, and everybody's realized that, and everybody's building an omni-channel strategy rather than just a standalone e-commerce strategy. People have moved away. And
Hmm.
then the third is the whole SaaSification of the e-commerce space, right? So there used to be a time we have to build stuff from ground up. We have to have a lot of technology build outs and so forth. And now, you just have to go pick the right tools. Once you have the list of like 10, 15, 20 tools that you want, it's so quick. You can get started and move forward very quickly in the space. So are some of the big trends that we have seen over a period of time, Ashutosh.
Well said. And you just spoke about omni-channel, and I've spoken to so many people. Most brands aspire to be an omni-channel brand. But what, in your view, is the biggest misconception about implementing an omni-channel strategy?
Sure. I think omnichannel, again, we see the US market, and it's a lot more evolved in the US than India. And I think the embracing of omnichannel is a lot more because there, your labor is very expensive. So obviously you need to do automation. So, that gluing of the different channels have happened much faster. And then the second is the expectations of the customer also has like evolved, especially through COVID. It's kind of gone through the roof in terms of how can you get stuff to me, easier, faster, a better way. So right now, a typical experience would be, hey, you go to a website, let's say Best Buy, right? So you go to Best Buy, you want like a laptop adapter, right? So you go look it up. It's going to tell you which is the closest store it's available in, and it's going to kind of you place the order online. It's going to show, hey, it's here, and then you just drive through. There'll be somebody who will walk in from the store, put it in your boot, and leave, right? So that's kind of the way it's evolved. And now I think India has leapfrogged that a little bit through quick commerce, and we've really beaten them with just labor arbitrage, right? So it's we can afford to do this, but where the shortcut to that there has been really integrating tightly in terms of different technologies. So the store, the individual, the e-commerce front, so all work seamlessly together. And then of course, so the next phase of that is again, they're all trying to move towards, let's say, quick commerce, which India I feel is definitely at least like 4 or 5 years ahead of US in that curve. So I think that's one big thing that people have learned, that it has to be seamless. It has to be it can't be operating in silos. And I think that's still yet to be fully implemented in India. That's my experience. And I think whoever cracks that and makes this whole process seamless, where I can go pick it up in a store, I can go pick it up in a kirana, I can pick it up through quick commerce, or whichever way I want, wherever I want. I think that's probably the next potential opportunity in my mind for the Indian
Very well
e-commerce.
said. Very well said. But continuing with your discussion about how, because of India's labor pricing, we managed to do the labor arbitrage. As someone who's seen this so closely, do you see technology overcoming the labor arbitrage using drones in the US for quick commerce?
I think that's happening already.
Yeah.
I mean, I was shocked. I was actually in a taxi in San Francisco 2 weeks back, which was the Waymo taxi. I'm sure you've all seen it in the video, but
Yeah.
it's surreal when you're actually sitting in it, right? It
Mm,
actually works. That thing, just does everything on itself.
mm,
It opens your door. It opens the door. You get in. You go, and you get dropped. And it's so surreal when you actually experience it. And I think if the car can drive you to a place, of course, the drone's going to drop
mm. Yeah.
packages in your backyard. It is just a question of time and regulatory approvals and all that. I think people have been testing it. I think it's just coming. There is absolutely no two ways about it in my mind that there would be a time very soon, maybe like 18, 24 months that we have drones, and I think that's something that's coming. I don't know how much of adaptation India will have, Ashutosh, to be
Mm,
honest,
mm,
just
mm,
because the labor costs here are so low, and then we still have this huge population who's hungry for jobs. So I think we'll still have a little bit more runway just leveraging
mm,
labor
mm.
before we are forced to invest in those technologies versus some of the others which are more reducing costs versus
Very
speed.
well said. But the other perspective I wanted, Shiva, from you was that there's the Amazon effect, which has transformed consumers around the world. How have you seen, or how are you seeing small businesses adapt to the Amazon effect? And you said a few minutes back that physical retail is here to stay, but are physical retailers just an adjunct of these big giants as a point of supply?
Yeah, great question, Ashutosh. I think read distributors and the whole distribution ecosystem and the manufacturing ecosystem, product ecosystem has really adapted to marketplaces, and Amazon is the big one. But of course, there are a lot of other marketplaces, like in the US there's Walmart, and here there's Snapdeal and Flipkart and so many others. So there is competition, and it's slowly emerging for Amazon, and people have adapted to that. There is this realization that marketplaces will provide you access to customer rather than margin. So it's a great way to kind of get in front of customers, build your brand, get visibility to your brand rather than actually make a lot of money. I think people have realized that, except for maybe smaller companies, smaller brands, the large brands still struggle to make money in a meaningful way in
Yeah.
Amazon.
Yeah.
Unless you are like a marketplace only brand, then your entire cost structure is built in such a way that it can kind of support a marketplace operation rather than an omnichannel operation. Then, because in an omnichannel, your cost structure is a little bit more. You have physical retail, you have distribution costs, and so forth. So that's kind of the big kind of realization that customers have had. And having said that, I think there is this need for people to have physical connection with the products that they're buying.
Uh-huh.
And the malls that used to die, but now what they've realized is that the malls that have gone away are more the strip malls, or in the US, the strip
Mm,
malls, or
mm.
malls which fail to give you that experience, right? Even today, if you go to some of the better built malls, you have a great experience and people keep going there, and
Yeah.
it's fully crowded, and it's there's more opportunity. So in my mind, I think there is space for both. I think there is strong place that both forms of retail will occupy,
Yeah.
and of course the marketplaces will be here to stay.
Mm,
They're going to try formats that they're going to try and enter into the physical space and kind of have a seamless experience. The physical retailers are going to try to enter into marketplace and yeah, e-commerce space. So it's going to be like a battle between the both sides.
mm.
But I think all the channels are here to stay, in my opinion.
Fascinating. My next question for you relates to data and supply chains. So, with increasing scrutiny on data and supply chains in the US, how can outsourced partners proactively support compliance?
No, I think the whole supply chain bit. So we at Vserve, we built like I believe a superior supply chain solution for our customers, and this kind of actually evolved very organically for us. We used to be in the e-commerce space. A lot of customers, like as the whole e-commerce space went into omnichannel, they said, hey, this logical extension, help us out on the supply chain side. So it's right from, working with the vendors, working with the customers, working with the logistics partners, making sure, it's we really like a 4PL layer on top of all the tools to get the products out faster to the customer and more efficiently. So that's what WeServe does. And I think in all of this, we've taken a very partnership-oriented approach. So our teams integrate almost seamlessly with our customer teams. So from an access perspective, our teams would have as much access as a customers to the whole data ecosystem. But then we're able to do that only because we take our data security very seriously. So we are SOC 2 compliant, which is a compliance requirement in the US especially for listed companies. When we want to work with listed companies, we are ISO 27001. So we make sure we build this entire operation on a very, very strong framework of compliance, both infrastructure, physical infrastructure, cyber infrastructure, and then also, we have, multi-million-dollar US-based insurance policy. So all of that just kind of gives that comfort to the customer that, hey, we work to the highest standards possible, and then we give full visibility to all of this to our customers. So that kind of really helps them get that comfort that, hey, we'll do the right thing.
Very interesting. And the other big thing that's happening in retail and the back end is using AI. How is WeServe using AI in areas like product tagging, image recognition, customer support, and what's next?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the big elephant in the room, right? Like in all these conversations, AI is coming. I think there's a realization that definitely AI is coming, is going to play a big role in whatever we are doing in the next few years. So there's no two ways about that. So same thing here. I think the first phase of AI, where AI is really your companion, is here. I think we all leverage AI. We always insist that we are technology first. So if there is technology that can replace human effort, we are the first one to embrace it, take it to our customers, get it approved, and roll it out. And then we've done the same thing with AI, right? So but it's more language based right now. It's more conversational. It's more information rather than actions. So the next phase is obviously the agentic AI space. And I think there are a lot of challenges in the agentic AI space that people are trying to overcome, in terms of, hallucination, in terms of, goal orientation. So those are some of the things that the AI is still not demonstrated. So I think it's anybody's guess whether it's like 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, how long it's going to take, but it's coming. And as and when it comes, of course, we'll be the first ones to embrace it and take it to a customer, because at the end of the day, customer wants value for money. And, as the more we can embrace technology, the more successful we are going to be. And we want to be the human in the loop, ensuring that, the AI tools work better for our customers versus their competition, which is always what we've been doing. There are a set of tools, there are a set of technologies, and whoever is able to leverage them the best wins that game. So that's kind of where we believe our competency is, to help our customers.
Very well said. And another question relating to AI, with AI tools becoming mainstream, what skills will be most valuable in managing future e-commerce operations? And this is from a people perspective.
Great question. So I think there was this theory that, hey, prompt engineering is going to be the thing, and people were saying, oh, you need to prompt better and all that. But I think a smart AI is going to figure it out, right? So if you think the AI is going to be as smart as we all believe, it's going to understand what you're asking, and it's going to take care of it. So I think the real difference in my mind, and of course, this is an evolving space that I'm also keenly trying to understand, is how do you stay relevant in this AI age? So my theory is, hey, it's all about critical thinking. If we can kind of critically think and understand needs, and so critical thinking is important. And two is just getting shit done, right? So just how can we make sure that we are proactive in moving ahead and getting things done better than everybody else. Those are two big things, and they're more towards, let's say, your outlook to life, your attitude, rather than anything else. And
Mm.
then maybe the openness and the willingness to fail fast.
Mm.
So I think that's also a big thing, because I think AI is just going to accelerate the number of iterations we go through
Yeah.
to build success, right? And I
Mm.
think in business, as you know, it's all about, finding that success formula
Correct.
in the shortest possible way,
Mm.
and then kind of sticking to it, and growing it, and then going for the next iteration
Mm.
and better. So whoever can do it faster, I feel, would have an edge.
Very well said. Shiva, I have time for two more questions for you. Uh, what is one operational upgrade, in your view, that is needed to make every seven-figure e-commerce brand add a zero and become an eight-figure brand?
Wow. I think that's a great question. It's yeah, I think AI, my mind right now, it's AI, right? So uh, the problem with AI is there's so many tools, and it's evolving so fast that it's so hard to keep track of what's working and what's not. So if the companies can leverage AI, be brave and not be afraid to fail in trying new things. I think that's one thing that's going to make a huge difference.
Mm.
A lot of companies are like a little bit of deer in headlight kind of thing, because they don't know, right?
Yeah.
And there's analysis paralysis. There's there's AI news hitting one every other day in terms of this way, that way, and this is the new tool and all that. So a lot of companies just say, hey, I don't know what to do, right?
Mm.
How do I make sense of this? And our suggestion always been, go try new things, right? So you were going to figure it out as you go,
Mm.
versus not deciding, or having a committee which will analyze it for like 2 months, and by then everything has changed. And so become more nimble, adapt AI. It's going to become obsolete in a few months. It's okay, but I think it's more the journey of adaptation rather than
Right.
the actual output itself, which is going to make a difference.
Very well said. And my last question for you. We've spoken about drones, we've spoken about so many different types of things that are going to happen. And yet, given the kind of knowledge and understanding you have of this space, what's the next big disruption you anticipate in the e-commerce outsourcing space?
I think it's going to be agentic shopping.
Hmm.
So your agents are going to know what exactly you want, and it's going to, cut through the clutter and give you the choicest of items based on your profile, your need. Like, I keep hearing this, right? So I play tennis. So the last three people I spoke to who bought a tennis racket, they all asked ChatGPT, right? So it's just going to get mainstream, and then in a few years it's going to be, hey, I think your racket is 3 months old. I mean,
Yeah.
3 years old. It's You need to replace it, and
Mm.
here's your style and all that. So it's just going to be a lot more integrated. The whole AI thing is a lot more integrated, and I think it's going to make you suggestions, and yeah, it's going to cut through all the clutter. So I think that's an interesting phase. But my worry is for product discovery, because there, again, only the top 3-4 guys keep driving, getting all the
Mm.
benefits
Mm.
versus the others. So I think my worry is on product discovery and how we are going to crack that. So I think the newer companies need to figure out how we are going to get in front of
Mm.
the AI algorithms. I think that's going to be the big challenge for.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And on that note, Shiva, and your new term that I have learned, which is agentic shopping, and I need to learn more about this. Thank you so much for speaking to me about how you set up WeServe. We had a very, very interesting conversation on e-commerce. We spoke about some of the significant shifts that you have seen. We spoke about the Amazon effect. We spoke about drones. We also spoke about data and supply chains, about using AI and quick commerce. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Great talking to you, and thank you for very insightful questions.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.